Hello, good people. Welcome to Off the Deep End, the Deep Listens podcast where we plumb the depths of role-playing video games in depth. And welcome, once again, to another fun Kusolstice special. My name is Jeff Rude, the host and the Basson's Black Bass with Hank Parker of this operation. Joining me, as always, we have the crackdown of the show, that is Chris Zombie Pie Redacted. Hello, Chris.
Hey, Jeff, I went into the Walmart and I needed to buy a couple of things, but I didn't know how much money if I had enough money to make the purchases I needed. So for whatever reason, now I have this box of Captain Crunch glued to my hand and I can't remove it unless I buy grape nuts instead.
A conundrum. Also joining us to solve various conundrums is the Steel Empire of the show. It's Braden, Arbitrary Water Redacted. Hello.
Hello, Jeff. I'm here. I'm ready. I'm looking at the sky and wondering why it's so dark.
You are like that man at the start of Twilight Princess, in the first 30 seconds of that game where it's still good, and he says, "Do you ever wonder why it's like kind of dark?" That's that game.
That game's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. It's not Kuso, just like Dragon Age 2. It doesn't belong on this special. Because we're talking about Kuso, as has become kind of tradition around these parts, we decided we needed to bring in a ringer, and I think we found the ringer of all ringers to talk about this specific subject. Joining us, the Thunder Force 3 of the show. It's Cassidy. I have you on Skype here as Cassidy. Is that a correct name?
Let's just go with Cassidy. That works just as well. Hello, by the way. Howdy.
Hello.
I just rode down here on a dolphin, so sorry if I was a little late. They're unreliable at times, but they are the way of the future, the cyberpunk future that we're all living in, and I'm glad to be here.
Future.
Aren't you worried about Nintendo taking away your dolphin?
No, I am worried about the Crew 3 computer, though. That's really going to start cracking down on all of us soon. These are all references to the game that I'm here to talk about, by the way.
It also
I don't know how deep all of you played into it, but...
Oh man,
I can't read Japanese.
If
there's an English
there is. Oh man, we're gonna spend some time talking about that. I think we may even have something like some news about that.
We may well.
Who knows? In case you were wondering why I was describing everyone in terms of hot B published titles, that was not redundant. That is because on this very special Winter Kusolstice episode of Off the Deep End, we are going to be talking about Hoshi or Miru Hito. That's right. Everyone knows what it is. Everyone's very familiar with this game. And that's why we don't have to spend too much time describing it. We could probably just jump right to ranking it. What do you say? This is going to play right to our audience's wheelhouse. Let me just begin by saying, the last time we did one of these was during the summer Kusolstice, and I nominated, basically, on a whim, Dragon Age 2, thinking it's a relatively dubious game. Not even in the right ballpark, not even in the right zip code, not even in the right hemisphere. This is the hemisphere.
Dragon Age 2 is in our top 1/3 of games we have played for this podcast.
Plausibly one of the best games we are ever going to play.
So where does this rate?
Well,
yeah, we'll talk about it.
We're going to do some science.
I'm going to challenge Jeff ever so slightly. Jeff, I think the people who listen to this podcast in particular, I would say at least half of our audience, especially those of you from South Africa, probably know about Hoshio Miru Hito.
And why is that?
Because we attract the weird ones.
I guess so. If anything on the Deep Listens podcast family attracts the weird ones, it is this little sub-series. And this is a sub-series of a sub-series. So you're like really, it's like the niche of the niche. To quickly go over
So you're saying we're the criminal intent of this podcast network?
No,
Yes.
we're the CSI Cyber.
I'm Vincent D'Onofrio. My head's cocked 45 degrees. I'm just like, that's the part where they made you play Hoshio Miru Hito. Isn't that right? very uncomfortable acting. Yeah, that show. Oofta.
Him doing his best worst Columbo, literally saying one more thing, but like not having any other mannerisms of Columbo.
You see, I got my wife, Miss D'Onofrio. She's at home all the time. She really loves these games. Just
For all the Law and Order fans out there,
Yeah.
I think it's another
Dick
part of your
Wolf
target demo.
Furious right now that we're making fun of his baby.
I met the creator of Monkey Island a couple years ago at a dinner.
Rod Gilbert?
Ron Gilbert. The one thing I took away from that encounter is he has the entire run of Law and Order pirated on his computer and likes to watch it. There's a fun fact. Okay, I have to run down the mandatory top level information. Hoshi, Miru Hito. This was a game that was developed by a studio called Another, and it was published by Hot B, those purveyors of quality fishing simulators.
Hot B is not one of my
Hot B
nicknames.
What was that?
Does anyone here know what Hot B stands for?
Allegedly, the B stands for bass. That is not true. They were not in the fishing game when that game or name came out for the game. These words were always confusing.
Subtitle on their title card in one of their games. I can't tell you which one, but it has the Hot B logo, and then directly underneath it, it reads, "He is over there because Hot B."
Amazing. You've heard it here first. Someone go to the Giant Bomb Wiki and make that edit. This game was released.
Go to the fandom Hot B Wiki.
Yeah. God. That's an inside joke.
Click past all the auto-playing Twitch streams.
This game was released on the 27th of October, 1987, for the Famicom in Japan. That date is kind of important. It was subsequently remade and re-released, actually twice if you want to be specific, but in terms of commercial releases, this was re-released in 2020 courtesy of City Connection, which is kind of a holding company that owns the rights to, well, most of Hot B, if not all of their stuff, and the game City Connection, among other things. There's also an unofficial remake that got made in RPG Maker that came out several years ago.
Which I'll talk about later.
Yeah. If you ever wanted a sicko to root around in some fan games, we have them right here.
We have a bit that's coming up where we talk about attempts to make this game palatable. I don't know. The funny thing about that Switch port that came out a while back, but only in Japan, is watching that trailer, they know.
Yes,
because
100%.
in that trailer, you watch that trailer, and the first thing that happens is the player character walks into a tree, gets into their first encounter, immediately dies, and it's the gravestone. And they know. They know what they're doing. They are in the same category as the company that keeps porting those Bubsy games on Steam. They know. They know you want the meme.
Well, this is Densetsu no Kosuge, the legendary crappy game, and if it's trafficking on that reputation, they're going to have to play into it at a certain point. And, they're right to do so, to a certain extent. I have some opinions about this game that I'm sure we'll get into in time. But yeah, I haven't played any of those fan makes. I've only played the original, the Famicom version. I've played it translated, I played it untranslated, and I think I largely know what happens in it.
If you, the listener out there listening to the show, would like to be a part of pre-show discussions on games from Hot B, which I gotta say, Baston's Black Bass with Hank Parker is really not that bad. You can do that on the Deep Listens Discord. You can get there by heading over to patreon.com/deeplistens. Kicking in any dollar amount will get you access to our ultra super secret Discord full of cool people and also me. At the $3 level, you will be able to actually send us a request of really any RPG or anything that mostly approaches an RPG you can think of. It will go onto a slush pile, which we dip a ladle into every so often and pull something or some things out. And we'll make a podcast basically for you. So imagine that. You can also send us questions really about anything via electronic mail. You can send those inquiries to inquiries@deep.lol for the time being. That is inquiries@deep.lol. And if you'd like to see the fruits of our labors at long last, we have a running list. That list is at bit.ly/OTDE rank. That's bit.ly/OTDE rank. All one word. And I guess before we go much further, I'd kind of like to brag about the bona fides of Cassidy a little bit here, because as I mentioned, when I said ringer, I'm really not joking. This is an individual who has gone through great lengths to not only buy a URL for Bad Game Hall of Fame, but then to set up actually one of, I would say, the best web resources in English on bad quote-unquote games. It is a fantastic website. I've read through everything that is on there, and to be honest, I refresh it kind of on the daily, waiting for the next thing to appear. And the beautiful thing about it is, in addition to being exhaustively well-researched and giving good, fair shrift to every one of these articles, it's also funny. It's really, really, really funny. So, Cassidy, I would like to cede the floor to you to just brag about yourself, please.
That's a lot to live up to there. I thank you for it. It's very nice. I promise there will be articles again sometime soon. I've just been in a bit of a slump.
It's okay, Cassidy. You played Descent to Undermountain.
I got to play more of it. I got to get back in there.
That's
I mean, I'm
something
compelled
I've
by
been
that
threatening
game.
to inflict upon these chuckleheads for a bit.
Bring me back if you do, because that'll be my impetus to finally play through that thing in full. I'm fascinated by that game. I'm fascinated by bad games. I have been for as long as I can remember. Back in the day, the AVGN, it was a popular figure. I don't know how popular he is these days, James Rolfe, but there was an era of games criticism that we're still sort of feeling the ramifications of, where people will get hyperbolic and exaggeratedly mad at these bad games. And I absolutely fell into that trap at a different phase in my life. But over the years, exposing myself to so many quote unquote bad games, it got to the point where you kind of have to wise up and understand that these things don't exist in a vacuum, that people work on these, that people put effort into these, and learning to appreciate that and learning to see past some of the more difficult stuff in games, bad control, poor design, that sort of stuff. If you train your brain, you can look past that stuff and find some really novel ideas in some of these games. So that's what the website exists to try and traffic in, is to try and give some amount of credit, give some amount of homage to these developers who poured their hearts into these things. It just for, some chucklehead on YouTube to say it's diarrhea flowing out of a buffalo's butthole or whatever. And so I just wanted to do something a little different than that. And if that means I have to write 40,000 words on the Rings Terrors realm for Dreamcast, that's what I'll do.
Who from your
God
website?
Bless you for it.
Yeah, who from your website?
I streamed that game, and boy, that thing. I've played a lot of shitty Resident Evil clones. I have been doing like a horror game stream thing for a bit, and that still, every single Dreamcast game I've played has been a banger in one way or another. And that Ring
that
game,
one, it counts. Ring's great.
That Ring game is something.
It's awesome. It wasn't supposed to be a Ring game initially. I don't want to get too deep down this, but it was supposed to be some time travel game initially, and it pivoted to a Ring game at a certain point. There's an article up on the site, badgamehalloffame.com. Look up Ring Terror's Realm. It's a treat. I love that game. I love this game we're talking about today.
Yeah. I ended up playing Lula 3D because of your website.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I don't think I can stream that on Twitch. Let's just
No, probably not.
That one seems kind of explicit, literally explicitly barred by some of the.
But boy,
Twitch
that
language.
game's got an ending, huh?
I guess by some definition of the word.
And so does she.
So I'm glad...
Anyway, sorry. Yeah, going to hell.
I'm glad actually you brought this up. Because we've had the experience of going back to games that maybe, let's say, early 2000s, whether it was James Rolfe or others, hyperbolically presented as being the worst. For example, we played Quest 64 and came away from it. It's like, this game's not that bad. It's fine. It's for kids.
Yeah.
It's always important to play a game like this one, where it's like, no, this is well earned. This reputation is earned. Like this, do not touch, do not make direct eye contact. This is as bad as the internet tells you.
I wouldn't go that far.
This game, being next to Spelunker on the list of legendary Kusoge, makes a lot more sense having played it.
Well, we'll see. We'll get into it, I'm sure. I do want to hear if there's anything else in the intro here, any other... Let's lay the groundwork, and then maybe we'll get into some of that.
So to talk about Hoshi Miru Hito, you have to talk about Hot B for a little bit, and probably the developer under them. But so to get into Hot B, so there was a boom in Japan around game development in the 80s, and a lot of people got in. Hot B is just another one of those sort of unassuming companies, and Hot B is actually a subdivision of an ad agency which was called First Farmers when it was founded. They did software planning under this ad agency. They got their toes wet starting in like 1983, was like when they were officially founded. Their first game came out for the Fujitsu FM7 and the PC 8801. It is called Psychic City. We will talk a little more about Psychic City. Because
okay.
it
We
turns
have
out
to. Yeah.
this is kind of
Yeah.
a soft remake of that game.
Mhm.
The thing that Hot B really, really, really became known for in really both hemispheres, I guess, is just an endless stream of fishing games. They made about a dozen of them in their relatively brief life. As we mentioned, the B was purportedly supposed to stand for bass. It does not. It apparently he's over there, bruh. Because which is astounding. It strictly speaking, the company went out of business in 1993. They released a title called Ancient Magic Bazue Maho Sekai in 1993, and then the day later they declared bankruptcy, which is kind of impressive. Their assets were bought up by former Hot B staff in 1995, who started a new company called Starfish. Starfish is a company that we might just bump into at some point, because in addition to making more black bass games, they had a crease and they really liked it. They made a sub-series of the Wizardry games called Wizardry Empire, many of which came out on the Game Boy Color.
Those are the tactic games.
Yeah, there was
Those
a PS2
games
one.
Suck.
Put a hot bookmark there.
No.
Hot B also had a strange U.S. publishing branch that was totally separate from the Japanese arm and actually outlived it. They are the folks who published Steel Empire and Thunder Force 3 in the United States, which is really, really weird and very much not in the ballpark of, again, primarily fishing simulating games. Thunder Force 3 is very, very, very good. Steel Empire is pretty good. As far as Another is concerned, they just appear to be a mercenary developer fly-by-night operation that got in when the getting was good during the Famicom boom. That's as best I can tell. The Game Developer Research Institute has them tied for stone certain to Shingen the Ruler, President no Sentaku, the Afterburner Tengen game that came out in the United States, and our good friend here, Hoshi Miru Hito. Also, apparently the first Black Bass game. They also did development work in addition to Hot B. They developed stuff for Tomochiki, Tokyo Shoseki, Athena, and Romstar. Not a lot of their stuff made it to the United States. Romstar published a bowling game from them, but they're primarily a Japan-focused developer. In terms of RPG output, this is, I mean, it sort of towers over the rest of their output in some sense, maybe for the wrong reasons. As mentioned, this is a kind of a soft remake of Hot B's first PC game, which was called Psychic City. So how familiar are we with Psychic City here on the panel today?
I tried to get it to work. Unfortunately,
it is the sixth town in Pokemon Red and Blue. It's called Saffron City.
So I didn't know when I was going to get to this, but I was
dojo
working
there.
with someone. I happened to be working with someone by the name of Rainey Baker, who recently passed, and they were obsessed with Hoshi Miru Hito and with Psychic City. They had been doing a lot of work on Psychic City, and I had been keeping an eye on that. 84, PC 8801 game. They had been working on a translation for that. I think they had translated the full game script, and I don't know if they posted that anywhere. I might still have that somewhere. I did not have a chance to read the entirety of the game script, but I am familiar with some of the events that happened in that game.
I tried to get Psychic City to work. The only, how far do I talk about this? Version of that game I was able to find out there was for the FM7 port, not the PC88 port, which FM7, those weird Fujitsu computers that were only released in Japan, the support for those is
minimal.
It could be better, but all of the instructions for like the, software, gotta be careful how I say this, is in Japanese. So the FN7 version of the game I just could not get to run. If there was a PC-88 version, let's just say my life would have been a lot easier.
Little better documented on the let's call it the aftermarket modes of running games. Let's say the old PC-8801.
I like the look of those PC-88 games, that weird gradient, like pointillist.
Oh, they're charming as hell. Yeah.
Yeah, that pointillist look. And looking at the screen caps of Psychic City, it had that kind of like dot-based art, and I just love that look.
There's a scene of like thousands of people being crucified on hills as part of the plot of that game. And yeah, it's like a striking image. A lot of really evocative imagery in that game, which I imagine is why it was so compelling.
And I know that in the Psychic City is considered by some one of the first sci-fi RPGs made domestically within Japan. Because, look, I mean, Jeff, I know that your toes are going to crawl into your feet when I say this, but if we're talking about all-time important games of that 80s era, we probably need to play the Black Onyx.
Oh yeah, that's an essential.
We probably need to play the Black Onyx.
Yeah, there's a fine SG-1000 port of the Black Onyx.
It's bad, but yeah, sure. Anyways,
I mean, look, I've been thinking about making us play Bokoska Wars for like a while. So,
but
there's
anyways,
an Xbox version of that game. It's really weird. Anyway.
They brought it out of retirement more than a few times.
Yeah.
I guess that looking at what I saw even of the PC-88 version of that game, like the way that the UI works in the Psychic City and like the way that it's displaying information, it's like we've crossed to the other side of the line of how far back in time am I able to go through the crustiness and willing to like continue to work through the grime to get this high concept experience. I don't know how far I am willing to go beyond like 88 at this point in my life. But yeah, I mean, looking at it in motion, it seems like a lot of wizardry-inspired RPG mechanics that lead to some bizarre and really out there visuals and story moments.
I think that's fair to say. And yeah, it definitely had a lot of depth to it in terms of the RPG mechanics. I know like there was like randomly generated party members to some extent. I don't remember that made into the final cut of the game or not. They definitely had some ideas. Another who did develop it, from what we can tell, even though there's not a credited developer, best guesses lead to them having had a hand in that. Certainly the scenario writer for that game was part of another and came back to do Hoshi wa Miru Hito, as was alluded to before. I think where In the Psychic City takes place in like a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk New York City, like real world, Hoshi wa Miru Hito maybe like deviates a bit from that. But like all the core concepts, like ESP, the schools of ESP that get utilized originally appear in the Psychic City. The dolphins, they are definitely present in that original version. Again, I would love to find the full script that Rainey had worked on for that, so you can at least like glean the plot from it at a certain point, because in lieu of a full translation, maybe someone will get around to that in time, but because I think there's something there. It's a novel concept, but I think it was probably better executed than Hoshi wa Miru Hito. I think they probably had a better understanding and better like appreciation for the hardware they were working with. That they probably reined in the technical aspects in a way that Hoshi wa Miru Hito perhaps doesn't. But again, I suppose we'll get to that in time, won't we?
I wish that Hoshi wa Miru Hito was as high concept and even like as graphic or like visceral as Psychic City, because like looking at those images of like you're literally in the womb and then you're seeing your character grow over time and like the devastation of this post-apocalyptic setting in the Psychic City, like Hoshi wa Miru Hito is like kids in supposedly this post-apocalyptic world, and it's just this bland like nothing universe with like some weird fun little things. I wish there was something that to like keep me going in what we played, the way that like looking at those screen captures of in the Psychic City, we're like, oh wow, this game goes places. Like, yeah.
So I do have to ask, how far did you get in Hoshi wo Miru Hito?
Let's go down down around the circle. Braden.
I'll take a guess and start with Braden, and we'll go small to big.
Hello. It was my birthday recently, and I said I need to play this game for the podcast, and I lasted about 45 minutes, and I said, "Boy, this not Dragon Quest, huh?"
Okay, Jeff, how much did you play?
I played about an hour and 15 minutes, which is longer than Braden, but I'm going to be honest, I'm going to wager I made less progress.
Okay.
Because, as we'll discuss, one of the things that this game can do to you is not let you play it very long.
So, yeah, Cass, I think I got you. I got to the third character. I got that girl, and I was trying to lead her back to the village to heal her up, but she kept dying, and I said, you know what? Nah, I'm done. I got to the big city.
Jump. You should have teleported.
I know. I learned how the teleport worked after I got to the big city. So,
oh no.
That was a mistake on my part.
Yeah, that would be bad.
So, yeah, I figured out how teleport worked after I got to the big city, so I had to manually walk her ass to town, and she just kept dying, and I was like, nah, man. I got right up against that space needle, so I could have gone to space and seen like the space sequence, but it was just like, oh God, please no. So yeah, I saw the 3 worlds. All 3 of there are basically 3 big worlds in this game to explore: the starting world, the city world, and then space, which again plays into the fact that in the Psychic City is this, let's just call it a high concept early RPG from Japan. But other than that, this game kind of almost sands off the edges, like the, let's say, more violent, visceral edges. Like, it's kids now leading the charge of saving society. It's developing friendships. It's
work. Becoming an adult.
Becoming an adult. Anyways, so to go back to an earlier point, what versions of Hoshi wo Miru Hito did we play? Cass?
Oh, I should also say, first of all, that I've played through this game in its entirety multiple times over the years. My most recent playthrough took 3 hours, and I streamed it, as a matter of fact. You can go find that on the Bad Game Hall of Fame YouTube channel. But I tend to play... There is a translation that currently exists. It will not be my method going forward. More news on that in the future. But there's a 2008 attempted translation by a translator named King Mike, which tries to translate some of the critical dialogue in the game. So at a certain point, you start talking to people, and it's just all jargon. And even the people you're talking to, it's very, like, interpretive translations. So I feel like I've never really gotten a good grasp on, like, the story as it's intended to be told. It is definitely not the ideal version of the game to play. And it comes in 2 flavors.
Yeah.
I should mention that there's a version of it that has some speed hacks in it that makes the game play a little bit faster. I do not play with that. I play it as it's intended to be played, or as close as possible. So that is the version I primarily go to, though I have played the Japanese version just so I can have, like, functional menus and, like, know what I'm actually selecting in menus, because that's another problem with the King Mike translation, that there's lots of empty spaces and item names that are missing or mistranslated. So, and entire spell lists for your party where every spell points to the wrong spell. So again, just a truly terrible way to play. Not to discount the efforts that King Mike clearly put into it back in the day, but clearly unfinished. Clearly wasn't ready for prime time. This is all we've had for the past 2008. It's 2023 now. Is that 15 years? I don't do good math on the spot.
I would say the thing that actually broke the King Mike translation for me was how that translated the potions as item 1, item 2, item 3, etc. Because they weren't, let's say, that is very unhelpful, and that makes knowing which one is which, like, downright unconscionably hard. And some items,
the game facts guides to have any clue what
some
items
some
are.
of the items, like the oxygen pipe, are just translated downright incorrectly to where it's unhelpful for you to progress.
It's a blank space in the inventory, so you don't even know when you picked it up.
Yeah, you don't even know if you picked it up. So I ended up playing this game untranslated for the most part. I also played the Japanese fan remake of this game, which uses RPG Maker MX, originally released for the Windows Vista operating system. So just beware if you find it. It's going to play in a very, 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 very small executable box unless you run it through a virtual box and do that. It's, let's say, a little too tongue-in-cheek for me. And also, I'm just going to say it, I think that era of RPG Maker looks bad. You made a version of this game for RPG Maker, and it's got a reasonable UI, and it's a little bit more straightforward to play, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you can die at the start of the game, and we decided to display the starting town as a tree. Haha, funny, right? So I thought that it was a little too, let's say, tongue-in-cheek for my preferences.
Yeah, that's the impression I got from it, and why I never really messed around with it. I don't want to play like the parody version of it. I want to try to get as close to
It's not even a parody. It just feels like a doujin work, where it's like, haha, we want to introduce this to a new generation, and we want to have the spirit of this game preserved. But the only tool we have is RPG Maker. Okay.
RPG Maker, responsible for many great atrocities over the years.
Certainly are.
Ask
Corpse
me
Party.
about my time with Corpse Party.
Ooh, yeah.
Someday I want to play that weird fan remake of Children Before Crisis, which I think is still floating around somewhere. But I guess I don't have to anymore because it's just bundled into Ever Crisis, right? The hot, very good and cool Final Fantasy VII mobile release recently.
Yeah. Right.
Definitely really good. Everyone feels good about it and is happy. And
anyways, so you boot this game up, right?
Yeah.
You're looking for a nice RPG time on your NES or your Famicom, and then I think almost immediately you realize, something is wrong.
Something's gone wrong here.
It reminds me when I played Virtual Hide, which is a much
favorites.
better game than this.
Love it.
Where there's an uncanny valley effect almost, but it's an uncanny valley of video games where you're like, this almost resembles something I recognize, but it's wrong in some way, and it upsets me on a deep primal level.
There's a certain cargo cultish nature to the hamartias of this game. In that Countdown Vampires, like they saw the thing. So I said that the release date is actually kind of germane here because this was a JRPG that had some things to work off of. So Dragon Quest I came out in like May of 1986. Dragon Quest II comes out in January of 87. This comes out in October of 87. Now I would bet you, somewhere between 5 and 20 Canadian dollars that this game was not in development for more than 9 months. Just spitballing, just from what I know about development from the era. I would wager it may not have been in development for 6 months. So they had two of these things to look at and crib from when they were taking Psychic City, which I will just say, in a very broad sense, comes like taxonomically is more similar to Ultima than anything. And this is more taxonomically similar to like a Dragon Quest than anything else.
Well, you want to talk about similarities to Ultima. Sorry to skip ahead a little bit, but you go to space in this game.
Exactly.
Like I feel like we buried the lead on that, and that's like straight out of the Ultima playbook.
Yeah, especially those first few that they were pulling from directly. And like, Ultima and Wizardry, obviously had major seismic influences on like Japanese video game development. Which, so Psychic City dribbles out of that, and this dribbles out of Psychic City. So you can sort of see a lineage here, but you can also immediately sense that they have the forms more or less correct, but substantively things are kind of busted, and it kind of all comes down to that first screen. So I don't know if you've booted. We have played through the original Dragon Quest for this show. So we can just talk about that directly. That game starts you with the ability to name a character, and then starts you in tutorial room with your dad and his friends, who are like, basically you can't leave this room until you learn how to use some of the systems in this game, like how to talk to people, how to open chests, open doors, etc. What this game does is it throws you hit start, and you are in the woods on a peninsula, and there is there's zero indication of what to do and where to go. Now, the obvious safe period response to something like this is read the manual. I was like, okay. I have not read the manual for this game, but my understanding is the manual is not particularly helpful.
I read the manual. Another thing Rainey did was translate the manual into English.
I read Rainey's
some of the
translation
functions
as well.
It gives some of the functions, gives you the plot of the game. It gives you basic understanding. It does, I think, reveal that one of the first things you need to do is locate the invisible city, the invisible town on the map, which is what we're getting to here, I think, is that the starting town, the starting village, staple of any RPG, is invisible on the map, invisible on the overworld. And it's not just because they forgot to draw a graphic for it.
Oh, no.
There's a plot reason for it.
Yeah, it's even
and should
sillier.
I get into the plots of this game? Because I feel like we should set that up so people understand what this game is about.
Yeah, I would. That would be wonderful.
Cyberpunk future, a world similar to ours, let's say, but probably not. I think they do call it Earth at a certain point. But anyway, there's this supercomputer called Crew 3 that exists somewhere out in the ether, and it has decided that humanity is a dead end, and so it brainwashes the Earth's population into driving themselves into an early grave. It is the concept that that's laid upon you, and there's resistance forces that emerge to try and combat this threat, that recognize what's happening, that the brainwashing doesn't work on, and these are people who happen to have ESP, and so the computer, realizing this threat, just kills all the psychics, hires bounty hunters, sets monsters upon them, does whatever they can to wipe out the psychics. And they do a pretty thorough job of it, save for 4 children, the 4 player characters, incidentally, in this game. And so you begin the game as Minami, who is a boy who has been whisked away to this hidden village. If you go to the village of Deus, which is a neighbor to the north, you can find a person there who says that they're the person who, when you were a baby, snuck you into that other city, and basically helped you to evade the bounty hunters and the death forces, the death army of Crew 3. And as the game goes on, you locate the other 3 psychics, them being Shiba, Misa, and Ain. And they all have their own backstories, sort of. Not really a game about backstory and developing these characters. You get clues. You get a little more than in a Final Fantasy, for example, where everyone is just a generic sort of stand-in, is just an archetype. These characters are meant to have some sort of history in this world. You're supposed to bond over these shared connections. You're supposed to understand the plight of the resistance forces and how they give shelter to some, and how different sects of the world have basically come together to protect you, knowing that this day would come, to some sort of prophecy where you 4 psychics will be the ones to defeat Crew 3 up in outer space. Should I get into the ending? Should I describe what happens at the end of the game as well, or do you want to save that for later?
Yeah, let's cruise around here a little more before we get to the ending, because it's
the start of the game, I feel sets the tone for what you've signed up for. But yes, so there is a story reason as to why your first major city is invisible. That said, there's a chance that you might bop into combat before you walk into that city, even if you know where it is. And that, to me, other than the invisible city, well, also, you walk painfully slow in the default version of this game. You walk painfully slow. I think that most estimates put it as 2 tiles per second, which is not what you would want.
If you've played RPGs from this period, I spent some time playing the original Final Fantasy and the original Dragon Quest as a part of this too, just to kind of
which we have previously bemoaned at times for being too slow. Those games being too slow as well.
Oh, sweet summer child.
Yeah, but quite fairly zippy compared to the movement of old. Which I guess we haven't mentioned this. Maybe we have, but the sort of unofficial English name for this is stargazers.
Those who look at the stars would be the more accurate sort of name. Yeah,
which is nice, but I've just been calling it old Hoshio, which is not helpful. But little old Hoshio Miru Hito here. You plod around. It is pretty miserable. If you know exactly where you are going, there is a speed run of this game from AGDQ 3 years ago. There's 45 minutes long. Cassidy has just said this is doable in 3 hours. It's one of those once you have this solved, it is almost less an RPG and more of an adventure game-esque thing.
That's fair to say, yeah.
Yeah, which, you know, the genres are kind of cousins, you see. But if you don't know what you are doing, and there's a very good chance if you are just like slogging through a pile of ROMs, you do not. It is an inscrutable, brutal, merciless thing to be spawned in a world with no direction where to go, take your first step north, land in combat, and die with nothing to show for it. Do we know what level we start in at this game?
0.
0.
So this is like the start of where I realized, oh, something's wrong here. So your default combat selection is ESP. I read the translated manual, and so it's about psychic. So obviously this is a more magic-focused RPG, right? Well, you don't begin with any ESP abilities because you start at level 0. All right, that's a choice. You got to make me work to get the cool stuff. Fine. I also noticed that there was like a little 5 next to my character, and it's like, well, do I only have 5 hit points? No.
It's
the game only
sillier.
displays or reflects 10% of the number of hit points you actually have. So that number is not helpful at all.
Well, the way they write it down in the manual is that they trim the last number off, the last digit of it. So you can have, like, by the end of the game, you have like 5,000 HP, but it only displays as 500. And so if you happen to have anywhere between, like, let's say 10 and 0 HP, it'll just show 0 if you're between like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So in the early game, when enemies are doing like 3 damage, and that can be like the death of you, not necessarily helpful to only have 1 digit representing that.
Or 0.
Yeah.
Or 0.
So that's a little bit of an oversight. I think they were trying to account for how big the numbers do eventually get, and they do get big.
They do get very big.
Ultimately,
like relative to, you know, Dragon Quest. Like Dragon Quest is a game where you are beating that game with like 100 hit points or something. Like I think the level cap in this game is 30, and you can wind up with north of like 25,000 hit points in this game, if I'm not mistaken. Which is quite high. Like that's a relatively high number for the NES to hold in memory. On some sense, it's an 8-bit system, so you're talking about like 65,000 some odd is like about as high as the NES can climb on like a single bit, if I'm not mistaken, or byte.
I poked around in memory for it. It does some really weird tricks to get a lot of that stuff to display. A lot of 2-bit, 4-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit integers within the game.
When you get multiple characters, something that I noticed is that when you have multiple characters on the screen, it only displays the HP of the character that's attacking at that turn. It doesn't display everyone's health simultaneously, other than like when people are attacking you, which is incredibly unhelpful when you're trying to figure out who needs healing. On top of that, the thing that kind of like got me kind of a couple of times was so this is a password-based save system. Passwords are incredibly long, and if you're playing that translated version of the game, they are very hard and difficult to input. But on top of that, they don't save the progress of all of the experience levels you've accumulated in the game.
No.
If you reset the game, it will dump your gold. This is something that I discovered the hard way, let's say. So if you hit reset, all of the gold you've accumulated, even if you load up a previous save, disappears.
So it drops to 255, which is like the 8-bit, and like you can only cap it like 256 bytes of data.
That sucks.
Here's the problem. There are items that cost 5,000 gold and are absolutely necessary to the progression of the game. I got to the part where I needed to buy
4 silver key cards, and they're 2,000 each, and the battles that it's spawning only give me like 20 gold, so I have to wail away on and then at the very start of the game, you realize that this is very incompetently made, because normally for an RPG, it instances based off of area. So the starting hub world will be the easy encounters, and then the next one will be the intermediate ones, and then the final level will be the hard ones. The instancing in this game is just a giant map, all the possible encounters that you'll have, and then just pure randomization. So when I got to the part at the end of the first world where I needed to get to level 9 so my attacks would actually do damage to the bad stuff in the evil city, I kept getting these intro to the game encounters that were giving me 3 EXP, and it's like, where are these skull monsters that give me 24, game?
So
and that
I think
it gave me the skull monsters at the start of the forest when I was level 0.
So I'd want to say it's not completely random. There are tier lists of enemies. There are like level lists depending on what part of the map you're in. And yes, the problem with that is, and it's something I don't know if we necessarily got across effectively here, is that the first encounter you may encounter in the game with your singular party member at level 0 may be an enemy that's like, let's say level 5 and can kill you in 2 hits, or cast a status effect on you that makes you unable to respond.
And then you only have one character, and now you're screwed. You just get to
watch
wait out
game until you die.
Yeah.
And so the whole beginning of the game is hoping that you get into encounters that are survivable, and then after every fight, basically, going back to that invisible village, talking to the healer in the village, getting healed back up, getting back out there, hopefully leveling up at a certain point, and then going back to the village, because when you level up, it doesn't restore your HP or your psychic powers or anything. So you got to make sure you're still going back there like every turn. And eventually, through that, you can get to around like level 4, I'd say, is like the sweet spot at the beginning of the game, because you start to develop Minami's psychic abilities. And this is something I really want to get to, in case people think this is just like a pure grind, just like a rip-off Dragon Quest, whatever the case may be. This is where the game goes off the rails. I like to call this game absolutely lawless. At a certain point, they had the book of game design in front of them that teaches you how to do all the game design things, how to make an RPG, based on like the handful of RPGs that existed at this time, and they throw that out the window. At level 4, you gain the ability to walk through walls.
Yes.
With your main character, to walk on water, to traverse through tiles, and completely just upend any sense of like geometry or like solid objects. So
it's like
by
suddenly
that
the
point,
map just does not matter, basically.
Yeah.
It does in spots. They do have tiles that you can't walk through or over, so you have to learn how to get around those, or
you can also just level entire walls with the break ability. That's an interesting concept.
Yes, they were really. Another was thinking about like how a psychic. This is me giving them credit, because y'all have been very hard on this game, and I get it. Believe me, I get it. I want to try to offer some alternate perspectives here, if that's all right. I want to try to offer a more optimistic perspective, a more positive one on this game development. I think another was really interested, and I think the scenario writer was very interested in how a psychic, someone who has these powers, would traverse the worlds, how someone who is thrust into this sort of adventure, and, so many video games will tell you that your guy is the most powerful guy in the world and he has all this crazy magic, and it only really comes up in fights. It only really comes up in combat, where you can cast like, you can summon knights from another world to do like some special attack, or you can grow angel wings and fly. And how does that reflect in actual like navigation? It doesn't. So I think that was something they were looking to sort of remedy. They said, well, if you were a psychic, these walls wouldn't mean anything. If you were a psychic, walking on water would be like a nothing to you. If you were a psychic, you would not have to worry about going through labyrinths and mazes to get to like an exit. You would just walk through or phase through this stuff. If you were a psychic and you wanted to get back to a place that you had previously visited, you would just teleport there. And so they give you these tools. And what's wild is that, like, if you want to play it like a traditional RPG, they still let you do that. Like, by the end of the game, when you're in space on like the space station, they're still throwing mazes at you. They're still throwing labyrinths. They're still throwing these like circular hallways with dead ends and stuff. And for no reason, because you have 2 characters in your party that can just go to the edge of the screen, walk around the entire maze, and get to the exit. So at a certain point, they give you the tools to like completely upend all the design, all the thought they put into it. And I think that's awesome, because who else would do that if not for another? Who else would like let themselves get into this trap of designing a traditional game and then give you the tools to say, oh, by the way, if you don't want to do that, just don't. Just walk through this wall, walk through this maze, figure this out. You figure out solutions. Having being able to break down walls that are in the way. Granted, you can't just break down every wall in the game, and at a certain point, why would you need to when you can just walk through walls? But like they were absolutely playing around with the idea of navigating in a video game and trying to figure out ways to make it play into the power fantasy of a traditional video game. And I think it's very conscious. I think it was a very deliberate choice they made at a certain point. Maybe it started, and this is me theorizing because we don't have a extended interview with any of the developers of this game. I like to think that they probably started developing this game with more traditional RPG navigation without having access to these powers outside of combat. And then at a certain point realized like what they had been doing, like the conundrum I mentioned before. If you have all these powers, why can't you use them outside of combat? And they already had all these stages designed. And then it's just like, well, shit. If we want to make them feel powerful, I guess we got to give them a means to bypass it. Do we want to like redo anything here? Nah, just let them walk through it. So that's my response to some of the accusations that have been leveled against it so far.
It's funny because if you look back, the like Famitsu review of this game is not, it's not an all-time low, but it is fairly low.
It's like 17 or 19 out of 40, something like that.
Yeah, which for reasons that me as a sick person would know, that's like a little more than like a deviation and a half off of like the norm at this time. You know, this is a publisher that gave, or a publication that gave like Famista 35, which was, I think, the same score they gave Dragon Age 2, or Dragon Quest 2, rather, when they played it. Like, tastes were a little different back then. So, you know, this game had a reputation kind of from the jump. But it's had fans. It's consistently had people who have seen something here kind of since its existence. And I think you've kind of gotten to the kernel of, like, what people see. It's the reason that I, like, you know, I, as a sicko, have enjoyed Virtual Highlight more than everyone else in this table.
I adore it. I legitimately adore that game.
I see something going on in that game. I do. It's not tremendous a lot of the time, but
that brings us to another point. I'm sorry, but I just realized Original Highlight, right? Like,
yeah.
What is that game if not a grind game? What is 90% of that gameplay if not bumping into enemies, then standing still waiting for health recharge? This is like it's a primitive era in the JRPG, to be certain, but the grind was like the gameplay. And we can complain with modern lenses, with modern perspective about like how much of the game is built around this grinding against these low-level enemies. But like, in some sense, maybe it was like therapeutic. Maybe they thought like that was the thing that people wanted to do, was just like see themselves growing, is hours and hours. And it does take dozens of hours to get to like double-digit levels. At a certain point, like, you're watching your characters literally grow in real time.
Yeah.
As you hit level milestones.
That is one of the more interesting things that happens, is as you're leveling up your party, for example, the ages of your characters and their battle portraits do change. It's a cool feature. The minute you get your third character, there is no party wiping at all. Like the fear of you getting a game over from a party wipe is virtually impossible, because at that point you have two characters that are basically walking tanks.
And the
you
third
also
party
have the ability to just
healer.
The third party member is a healer, and then also Shiba has the ability to just teleport a character out of battle. So even if the characters that are still on the battlefield die, you have one person who's just gone and ready to just pick the pieces up. I would also say that it has a basic crafting system well before a lot of JRPGs or even RPGs had crafting systems.
That was
a really good point.
I absolutely hate this potion system, but it deserves credit. I mean, the thing that drove me crazy was I would know what the recipes required, but I would accidentally put them in the wrong order. And even if you have the 3 pieces that particular potion needs, if they're not in the correct order, you get a fail.
Well, there are NPCs who straight up tell you what the sequences are. Like
it doesn't tell you everything, and also I feel like, again, if you're playing the translated version, knowing what the final product is a little difficult. Yes, you have to consult a guide. Playing untranslated, it's actually a little bit easier because you just learn the vowel sounds to vowel and consonant sounds for the different katakana. This game also is a weird mix of katakana and English, especially when you start using the password save system, which is wild.
And if you read a robot's mind in Arc City, they speak to you in random like letters and numbers, English letters and numbers, which is a fun little touch.
Yeah, it's a crafting system. It's a system that kind of reminded me of the early Wild Arms games, where leveling up can give you powers to, like, you can jump over stuff, and then also you have these potions, and ultimately the only potions that matter are the ones that give you full PP magic points and full HP. and the potion that you need to craft to get rid of the horrible disease in Deus.
Yes.
Those are the only ones that matter, really, really, really.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, especially because like some of the nuts you get that for like the later, more impressive recipes, you only start to find later in the game, and they have like very like static points in the map where you farm them. Basically, it's not the best crafting system to be certain, and it's completely in lieu of a traditional inventory system of traditional item shops where you go to buy like potions or Phoenix Downs or what have you. You have to make the items that you want to have on hand. You have to craft them yourself. The only items that like really factor into the inventory, as it were, they have two separate inventories. One for the nuts you're holding onto, which are the components that create recipes. You have the potion menu, which is the result of that. Then you have your inventory, which is the key cards that you need for opening doors. And we should get to how those work in a minute. And then you also have stuff like the oxygen tank, which allows you to breathe in space. You have these bombs, which apparently improve the ability to of break. It actually multiplies your break, so you can break like even stronger walls at a certain point. Is what the bomb is supposed to do. But
is there any reason to buy more than one bomb though?
No, I mean it's disposable, but also like you only use break. There's only 2 points in the game where you need to use break. Otherwise,
there are a couple where it's recommended. Like when you're trying to pick up the oxygen tank, just breaking the walls and then walking over to the area is much better than navigating the labyrinth as is.
But by that point, you can already walk through walls. By level 4, which you need to be to get your second party member, which is still in the first map of the game, that's where you can start to walk through walls. That's where you can walk on top of them and not get into random encounters. If you're on top of a wall, you can't get into a random encounter. So that's how you bypass combat in the labyrinths. The oxygen tank is an invisible item in a map that exists between towns in Arc City. When you leave a town there, it takes you not to the outside of the town that you entered into it from, but to this weird nebulous state that it exists between them.
So this is something that even happens prior to where when you enter a dungeon or enter a new interior environment and you exit, it will spawn you not where you last left off. I think the first one where it really happens is when you go to Deus and then you exit Deus and it spawns you back next to Tree City.
The beginning of the game, the very first spot of the game. Yeah, I think what they forgot to do was add pointers to like exit coordinates for where you're supposed to go when you leave those towns, when you leave those dungeons. I think that was neglected at a certain point. And then
when you gain the jump ability, you can teleport, and then also you can just jump over to the other side of the continent, and that makes it easier. But starting with Arc City, like, your jumping is really limited based off of like doing pseudo Sokoban puzzles, which is not fun. You're playing like a version of Chip's Challenge at that point.
Yeah. What's awesome is, since I think we've talked a lot about Arc City now, so I can start to get into some of the stuff that happens at that point in the game, in the plot. By the time you get to Arc City, which is like the second part of the map, basically, you have the overworld that you start off with, which is like a sort of like crescent-shaped island. It has some forest areas.
Yeah.
You eventually find a way to Arc City, which is a more futuristic-looking city. Has a lot of impassable tiles. It is very convoluted. It doesn't look great either. I will admit the graphics.
I think that this game
very
looks
confusing.
Terrible. I think that especially the tile sets that they selected for Arc City are just downright awful.
Like a lot of pixel vomits. Yeah.
The weird, like, vomity, brown goldenrod box-like shapes that are next to the orange, the, like, brick orange, neon orange colors are just vomitous.
So this point, when you get into the Vomit City, as I like to call it, by this point you have a second party member, Shiba, who has improved jump. Every one of the characters specializes in a different school of ESP. Minami's is break, Shiba's is jump. Misa is a shield, and Ain is like some regenerative stuff, if I remember correctly. I don't remember the exact name of it. The point is that when you get to Arc City, there's 2 cities within Arc City, an industrial district and a government district. And what you find Misa there, or is it Ain? You find your 4th party member before you find your 3rd party member. And it breaks a lot of the menus in the King Mike translation. Anyway, you find one that basically says, we got to go find the other one. And to do that, you need to contact some resistance cells. You find that party member just like standing outside of a building. She basically begins your quest to find the 4th and final party member. And so you need to gain the trust of this resistance cell here. Some of the shopkeepers will be in on it. You can buy advice from a guy who like basically gives you clues on how to progress. Again, this stuff is not translated properly in the King Mike translation, but a Japanese player will be getting some essential hints at a certain point. And what you eventually land on is that there is this guy named Max, I believe it's translated as, who is like a legend in the Resistance, and he's like the name. He's the code word that if you mention his name, people will start to trust you. But here's the problem. A lot of the people you want to talk to are inside of locked buildings. Now, some of these buildings, you can just walk through the walls, completely circumvent it. But they all have these doors on them. These doors take key cards. Key cards are used in this game in the same way like you would use like a key in like a traditional game where you use it once and it disappears from your inventory. So let's say there's a door that has a silver key card that you need to use a silver key card to get in. So you buy it for 5,000 gold or however much it is. I don't remember the exact cost of every item. And so you go through it once, it locks behind you. You have to buy 2 of any key to actually get outside of the door you just walked through. You can soft lock yourself super easily at this point in the game by forgetting to have multiples of a card. So you go through, and then you're stuck inside, and you can't get out because you can't break the walls. And so you reset the game, and all the progress you made up to that point. So that's a bit of a problem in and of itself. But basically, you go through this process of talking to this one person who's inside a hospital behind a wall that you have to break behind a key card wall. And so you talk to that person, you relay the name of Max to some other person who says, go back and talk to that guy because Max is dead. And that's the clue that lets that guy give you the direction of who to talk to next, to get you in contact with someone who gives you a key card that opens the door that is housing the last party member of the game, which is an incredibly convoluted sort of little quest in the game. But they're clearly trying to play with some sort of idea here of like the world is distrustful. These people are brainwashed. You're lucky that there's even a resistance at this point, that they're protecting this one person. They have the wherewithal to still, protect this psychic for you. And so you're going to have to gain their trust. And so that's like, considering that in previous RPGs at this point, whatever existed, like we barely even had parties at this point. And so it almost makes a sort of sense that, in this cruel cyberpunk world, you'd have to jump through some hoops to like find where that person is being hidden. If y'all are like a targeted race of people in this, if y'all, the psychics, are like being hunted to extinction, they probably wouldn't just show up and say, oh, you're going on a quest, let me join you. So that's me giving it some benefit of the doubt. Cool. Admittedly, in execution, absolutely miserable.
It's miserable because, so I ended up looking up, you need a minimum of 2 blue ID cards. The blue ID cards need to be picked up from a specific person in, I believe, Eartha in the residential area, and then where you cash them in the government district is not necessarily significantly far away, but it's a distance that can still subject you to a handful of encounters if you're not clear as to where they are. You need a minimum of 4 silver ID cards. Those are 2,000 per pop. There's a couple that you can get for free, but still getting the required amount of money is going to take you time. You need 1 yellow ID card. Getting that one involves kind of what you were talking about, like buying the advice for 300 gold first, which is still 10 times cheaper than actually buying it from the merchant. But still, it's a pretty involved sequence of events that you need to go through. And I will
say this. Work. I do really want to say this, which is that we don't know at this point if that's the only way to solve this quest. What remains to be seen, because what you're talking about is something that's referenced in a game facts guide. And admittedly, that's what I use as well to progress in the game right now, because without the benefit of knowing what NPCs are telling you in the overworld.
I would also say that there are red herrings, because there are the fake ID cards that may or may not work. There's the welcome ID card that leads to kind of the control room in the space tower, which you need, kind of. And then there's another, I think it's gold, which just opens an empty room in the hospital, which is a red herring. So there are multiple...
That's what I'm curious about. I think there's a breakable wall in that room. I think that gives you an alternate means of getting to the guy you need to talk to. There's so much stuff that still needs to be explored within this game. We're taking it for granted that there's only one way to skin a cat in this. They could be with the freedom given to you between your powers.
Yeah, but you're still skinning a cat. I mean, like this is not... You're still skinning a cat.
Sure. I'll give you that. And the fact that, if you want to go that route, the most direct route would be to buy those key cards. And if you're having to reset your game and lose all your gold every time, at a certain point, that's
gold
a
is shared between characters. So you that's the other thing. You have to kind of switch between characters if you want to make multiple purchases, because each person is getting money and separate allotments of money.
No, that's wrong. You're straight up wrong. No, every character gets the same amount of gold. When you get 8 gold from an enemy that drops, each character gets 8 gold. They all have their own separate supply.
No, that's
of
what I
gold.
meant, is that when new characters get added, they start with nothing. And so you have these characters with 2,000 gold, and then you have a character with nothing. So re-equipping them or getting them back to speed is going to require a little bit more work.
Sure, but you're doing the grinding to get them up to level whatever anyway. They all start at level 0 when you get them in your party, so you need to level them up.
Which is not a fun process.
I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying that there's, it's something you're going to inevitably do. If you're playing this game legitimately, if you're playing it like the way it's meant to be played, engaging with the mechanics as they're meant to be engaged with, yeah, you're going to have to get these people to level 15 to have any sort of parity with the rest of the team. And in the process of doing that, they'll have the thousands of gold. And as long as you're spending it before you save your game and reset, like that's the goal. Like I think like a day's work with this game, I think the way it was meant to be engaged with is that you start playing the game, and you say, okay, today I'm going to get this character to this level, I'm going to get them this much gold so I can buy this item from the shopkeep. I can buy this weapon, which turns out to actually be less powerful because they don't tell you what amount of damage each weapon does or how much defense each armor has in the game. So you can actually buy stuff that's more expensive and is slightly worse than less expensive options. Yeah. But that's a whole other kettle of fish. So I think like the way like we engage with it now is like you're looking to get through the game. We're looking to like finish the game in a timely fashion. I think this would be more of a time investment where it's like my goal for the day is to get this item on this character, to accumulate this much gold in the 2 hours I'm going to play this game for, buy this item, save my progress, and if my gold rolls back to 255, it is what it is. I at least made the maximum number of investments with my time and with that money for the day. Then I'll come back tomorrow, get to this level, get to this amount of gold, buy this many items, and then continue on my quest. I think it's just a very different way of engaging with games than what we're used to with benefits of modern game design, streamlining a lot of this stuff. Is that necessarily a great way to engage with a game? Is that necessarily what games should be designed like? Probably not. But this is still a nascent genre at this point in time. They're still trying to work out the kinks. And I think there needs to be some consideration paid to that fact is all. I think there needs to be an understanding that as they were charging forward in a brave new world without a lot of standards compared to, I think, with Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy coming out within a year of this, did they have time to pivot their design? Did they have time to see what these games were doing and to make some of the changes, make some of the quality of life changes that these games innovated? Probably not. When you're like in a bubble as a developer, when you're locked inside a studio putting in however many hour days and you're just doing like what you think is best and working towards some sort of like shared creative vision, you sort of miss the forest for the trees and don't really know what the outside world is doing with the genre that you happen to be contributing to. So I think it's just a difference in how we approach games now versus what they were trying to figure out. Like how many platformers had miserable jumping for a while? How long did it take us to figure out what jumping should look like in a platformer,
Yeah. So I'm a sicko. I've been talking about this on Discord. I've been going through. I've made a horrible list. It's almost never a good idea to make a list for yourself of all of the old junk that I own in one form or another, and then I've cross-referenced that list with retro achievements to see like what I could farm on there that I legally own one way or another, and it's led me to go back through basically to I think. The oldest game I have a license for is Battlezone for the Atari 2600. And I've just been farming achievements, and I very recently got up to Super Mario Brothers on the NES. So I've played a lot of pre-Super Mario Brothers games where you jump, and gotta say, pretty bad. A lot of them. I've played multiple versions of Congo Bongo, and almost every one of those are terrible in their own unique way. Like the SG-1000 platforming in Congo Bongo is a different sort of bad than the platforming in the 2600 version of Congo Bongo, but both are terrible. Both are like abjectly, like shockingly bad compared to even like Kangaroo and Zookeeper and like contemporary arcade stuff. Miserable. And so yeah, in the course of that's kind of where I stumbled on. Again, touching Dragon Quest 1 and then a little bit of Final Fantasy 1 recently. And, Dragon Quest feels like a real thunderbolt on the platform, the Famicom, in a lot of ways. And it's also not that far removed from this time-wise. But yeah, I can't help but wonder how right you are, because this just feel like they've like politely looked at Dragon Quest 1 and then 2, which did come out a little while before this, and said, "That's neat, thank you," and just politely ignored them.
I think with the timelines, I don't remember exactly like when Dragon Quest 2 came out.
I think I probably just did it now too.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think it's, again, like, I don't think they're able to play every game that was coming out. I'm sure they were aware of Dragon Quest's success in the market, which is why this game came to be, why it's on Famicom at a certain point, or even like a Dragon Slayer, for another franchise that was booming at the time, and it went on to, become prolific in its own right with mechanics that we'd also see as antiquated now. That first Dragon Slayer, where like you're building a home and dragging your home with you across this map. Like, these are things that, like, we look at it and we're like, this doesn't make any sort of sense, but like, again, people figuring it out on the fly, and there has to be some consideration paid to that. And I get that, again, it's probably a miserable experience to play nowadays, and with the benefits of what we know and having had so many decades of game design and watching it evolve in real time.
I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like when you consider the fact that the popularity of Wizardry and Ultima, and I do feel like I can go back to at least Wizardry 2, I don't entirely agree with that, only because I feel like there are certain things that this game in particular does that I would say were solved. Being able to back out of something that you selected, an attack that you selected that by mistake, that was solved. That was
to be clear, there's straight up issues with the game. There's straight up stuff that's unfinished.
Like,
we should go down the list of that.
Saying, "Oh, it's just this guy. Oops, I accidentally selected ESP. I should be able to back out." Nope, I'm committed to using ESP in this.
Yeah, the B button doesn't work in menus. For the benefit of people who don't know, we're talking about B button doesn't work in menus. You can't back out once you've made a decision in a menu. You're committed
back
to
out of your choices in a menu.
Yeah, that was a solved problem.
We also failed to mention the part where the way the screen scrolls does not work correctly.
If you've ever seen
a problem on the NES, though, I feel
that's a problem in a lot of NES games. But the energy I get from this game is that it was not coded particularly well.
No, certainly not. There's a lot of oversights that lead to a lot of issues with the game. It's why it was so difficult to get a functional translation working for this game, because it just does such weird stuff with like how it addresses memory, how it keeps track of stats and stuff. This game is held together by duct tape, as they say.
It has a lot of ideas. Like someone, I can agree with the sense that someone worked very hard on this game and had a lot of great ideas and tried to put them all into this thing, and they didn't pan out. And there's a reason why not a lot of games today, or even contemporaries to this game, were scrambling or thinking about, man, we should really implement the weird nut collection thing that leads to potion system from Hoshi Miru Hito.
Well, I will say one thing for this game, and it speaks to one of the biggest omissions, one of the biggest things they couldn't finish or broke in the process.
Oh, yeah, the final boss battle. Oh, wait, sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, the ending in final boss battle. No, you're exactly right.
No, I did some evil wizardry. I wanted to see what the ending of this game was. So I found a save file that took me to the end of the game and skipped to the end of the game. Also, we forgot to talk about the dolphins. Cass, could you talk a little bit about how this game's actually about evil dolphins?
We gotta set the table.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Dolphins. So the whole Crew 3 thing is a sham, is a lie that's been told to you your entire life. In actuality, Crew 3 doesn't exist. It was a race of sapient dolphins, of psychic dolphins that are floating on the space station, that are aliens, actually not really dolphins, but are aliens from another world that have come to this world and are studying, and in the process felt threatened, potentially. There's dialogue here I would really love to see translated, and might be able to see soon one of these days. You can, when you get to space, when you're traveling through space, floating through it and doing these little dungeons up there, you meet the dolphins, and they have a lot to tell you. You speak to all of them using ESP, which is an ability you get that one of your party members has the ability to psychically communicate with people, and that's why you need to have that last party member when you get to this point in the game. And they basically tell you the truth about what happened. And the final decision you make in the game, the final prompt in the game, is a dialogue choice, which has not existed in the game outside of like buying stuff from shops at this point. You speak to a dolphin who's like, okay, so how do you want to play this? You've made it up here. We could fight. We could just leave peacefully. You could just let us go and we'll go find some other planet. We can work together. We can work together in harmony and usher in a new era for humanity. And so that gives you 3 choices, effectively, at this point, which, when you select them from the menu, will lead to 3 different endings, which are all the same, like, graphic of, like, the spaceship flying away from the planet, and they give you, like, the text scroll that says, the dolphins left, and the Earth is kind of screwed, humanity is still, like, in dark times, you didn't really solve the problems. Or you can work together, and humanity has, like, something to look forward to, or you can fight them, which results in immediate death of your party, and them eradicating the human race. What's missing is that final
the actual
fight.
battle, because you're supposed to, like, here you are kind of preparing, getting your purchases, getting ready for the final boss encounter, and you say, I want to fight, and you're ejected to the title screen without so much as even the credit screen. I think you forgot to mention that part, because they didn't program the boss fight.
Yes. So with that missing, you don't have the option to potentially prevail against them. There's supposed to be a 4th ending in this game where you fight the dolphins, are able to beat them, and then, presumably, like, take over the technology and use that to save the Earth on your own terms. And, like, a final boss is what an RPG builds to. Like, what's the point of a power fantasy if you can't overcome a god at the end? Or, as it happens to be, the dolphins that have taken control of the Earth, like, without your knowledge, right? Like, to be able to conquer them. And, so ultimately what it leaves you in the position of is that the best ending is the one where you just elect for peace and work together, which, is kind of touching in some sense.
You've got a good ending, a normal ending, and 2 bad endings, essentially.
Yes, as it turns out to be.
This also feels like maybe the most Dragon Quest-y thing to do, like, in terms of, like, literally, like, the last portion of that game is you getting to, like, the big bad Dragolich guy, and he's just like, "What, you want to help me? I'll make you, like, my prince or whatever." And you can say yes. It gives you a choice there at the end, which is fun. So that maybe feels like the most cribbed from part of this game in a sense, which is funny. It's a reference.
Yeah,
just say
I'd buy that.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? We don't know what was in their hearts, ladies and gentlemen. As mentioned, there's no schmupulations, masterpiece on this game yet. Maybe there will be someday. It's quite the ending. Braden, does the ending make you feel any different about the game?
I think it's very funny.
There you go.
I've been sitting here in silence, just going, oh.
Like, we're talking about a game, and just to, like, list off a bunch of things we didn't get the chance to address here, because I feel like we're working to some sort of conclusion here. Like, this is a game where you can't escape from fights until you learn the ability to escape, or until you have a party member who can teleport you out of fights. So those early fights that are, like, impossible to win, you're just stuck in them if you get in them initially. We're talking about a game where the inventory doesn't make any sense. Right? Because, like, there are items that you're buying from shops that are objectively worse than what you have, where characters don't share inventory, so you can't pass, like, a weapon from one character down to another one, and if you buy a new weapon, it just destroys that weapon that was previously in that slot. So the economy is just completely broken in this game.
Oh, and we forgot to talk about the whole, like, overcasting spells. Like, the fact that you need to power up spells so as that they are effective against higher tier enemies.
Yeah, investing your psychic points, putting more psychic points into a spell from a limited pool that you have.
Interesting idea. However, there is no worse feeling than I just spent like 200 points of ESP, and either the spell didn't hit or all I got to show for it is like 5 damage. Like, there's
We're talking about a game. It's a really good point. And then we're talking also on that very similar vein, once you get to new areas of the game, once you get to the second area of the game, you find that all the attacks that you have are basically completely ineffective. That the weapons that you had maybe spent, hours getting the gold and XP to be able to use just don't work. You only have the ESP to rely on. So you have to go back to the first world to continue grinding over there because you can't grind on these enemies because they're straight up impossible encounters.
And
that's a major roadblock.
And then also to continually get these the last 2 female characters in particular, to have them start at level 0, and then on top of that, for whatever reason, this is even something that they just straight up say in the manual, where even if the EXP you get from a battle causes multiple levels, you're only going to get credited at the end of the battle for 1 level up. You have to keep having battles to get the remaining level ups. So let's say you get into a combat encounter and it gave you 50 HP or 50 experience points, and that would be 2 level ups. Well, good old Ein is only going to go to level 0 to level 1, and then you got to go through another battle to have the rest of those levels show up. That's
and one of the most frustrating things, potentially, I think, is we talked a lot about the teleport spell that Shiba gets, which lets you warp from the overworld to designated places. You go into a town and say, I want this to be a jump point, a teleport point. I want to be able to quick travel to this place. So you go into the city, you set it for one of your 3 slots that you unlock. So let's say you have the starting town, you have the government district, you have the residential district. Let's say you want to get from the residential district to the starting town. So you go to your inventory, you go to the menu, you go to jump, you select the town you want to jump to. You don't jump. Oh, you just accidentally overwrote the slot that you had. And now it just counts. Now you have 2 entries for the residential district in your menu. You can only warp when you're in the overworld. So you can potentially soft lock yourself again by not being able to teleport out of like sticky situations from behind a locked door in the hospital, for example. You can't just rely on your teleport to get you out of that bind and back to where you want to be. So that's a major issue with how that's implemented. You could have just had a menu for, do you want to set or do you want to use this jump? And that's just something they weren't thinking of or didn't have the wherewithal or know-how to implement into the game properly.
Stuff like that just feels like playtesting, honestly. Just kind of didn't happen, which is where the time part of this comes in as far as I would postulate. Because that's the kind of stuff that, like, someone, you know, you let people bang on this game, like, you know, 5 or 6 young people who are getting underpaid to come play a video game for a while, that would get noticed. And that's either a known shippable thing at a certain point, or it was made aware and they didn't elect to do it, or again, the shape of it is just like, they may just not have been made aware. That's my gentle guess. So, you know, a mistake, but one that, you know, as the industry grew, we got a little better at sort of hunting out, because again, you would pay people to hammer on this for a while. Just fun little mess. What a little mess. The more this has been talked about, I've come to this realization, which may be a pivot point to maybe start thinking about putting the end cap on here, of like, what is this most similar to actually? Because again, you've got the ability to kind of ignore broad mechanics of this game. It's got a sort of rough reputation. I think this might be the most similar to something like Sticker Star 3DS. There's RPG stuff happening in this game, but it's if Cassidy is to be believed, and I think if anyone in North America has given more thought to this, I would like to meet them. I get the sense you know some folks who have or had. It's kind of not. It is an adventure game. Maybe this isn't an RPG. Maybe it's pretending to be an RPG. Is this
an RPG? It's an RPG in a very primitive sense. It's an RPG in the sense that it was made to have the leveling. It is built around the leveling, as long as it may take. If you're looking for a point of comparison, another great classic of Kusoge is SNES RPG by the name of Maka Maka, which is another just shockingly unfinished video game released by, I think, Sigma, Japan only. And that is another game that has a lot of like mechanics that just don't make any sense.
Oh,
right, to our modern perspectives.
Oh,
yeah,
Cassidy, would you say this game is more incompetent than, let's say, Tecmo Secret of the Stars, perchance?
Tough one. I'm going to say yes. In terms of technical execution, I would say yes. There's obviously faults in this, and I know I'm trying to be like positivity here. That's kind of my brand, is try and give these games the benefit of the doubt.
I'm glad.
And I'm sorry if that puts me in contention with folk. I'm sorry if that puts me in at odds with people, but I need to try and do devil's advocate to a certain extent.
This is the value of your website, as far as I'm concerned, is someone making. And I don't get the sense that you're doing this in jest, that this is a bit like there's something.
No, certainly not.
Yeah, there's a oh god, now I'm trying to remember the individual's name. His name is Stuart Jibb. He is a Retronaut contributor. He has a book that has come out or will come out very soon called All Games Are Good. I get the sense that his line of thinking is somewhat in line with yours. Like there's something to every game if you're willing to give it some benefit of some doubt.
No one goes into a video game in the video game industry saying, I want to make a bad game. Like no one does that.
There's a couple of those, like Hong Kong 97, which is a joke game. There's a category. I have categories of game. There's a deliberately bad category.
But the people who worked on, for as much as I guess I am the most negative person about this game, no one went into this game wanting to make a bad game.
Certainly
they had the ideas that define the large swaths of this game very clearly communicate that, yes, it was a recipe that they tried and then they messed up by putting in ingredients that they knew would conflict with one another. And it was not, let's say, an established recipe at that time. You had to figure it out. You had to find the secret sauce during this period of time.
Certainly. You can't fault it for its ambition. You can certainly fault it for aspects of technical execution.
The execution, definitely.
And just like, the worst thing a game can do is waste the player's time. I think it's one of the most egregious sins a game can commit. And this game is absolutely guilty of that. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I think it was built at a time where the culture was different. And I do want to also make this point. We talk a lot about, you use the word kusoge a lot. And, we use the word now in certain circles and in the English-speaking web. And I think we misuse it a lot. Because kusoge isn't just any bad game. In Japanese,
it has to be a right kind of a bad
there's
game.
A vibe.
It's a bad with ambition. It's a bad that can be respected. It's a bad that they can appreciate on some sort of level for like the effort that was put into it. Which is why I sort of campaign against like using kusoge to refer to like English developed games or Western developed games, right? Just because I think like it's such a specific thing.
This game does deserve a lot of credit for pioneering the culture of Kuso. Like,
absolutely.
This game started that, and I think that's why there are people who are nostalgic of it. The way that we in the West of bad movie clubs maybe talk about like Troll 2 or Tommy Wiseau, like that is this game is talked about in that parlance of bad video game clubs, and
absolutely
that this game should be treated almost like the way that we talk about Tommy Wiseau or
absolutely or like
Green.
Emperor Kusoge itself, where like it's a game that is absolutely a technical failure and is impossible to play, but people have seen past that to have like dedicated fan clubs, meetings with the developers of those games,
and like
to celebrate it like genuinely. It's without irony, or there is like an irony, but the irony is like transcended to a point of we can talk about it as being the king of bad games. This is the emperor of bad games.
I would say this, like Hot B and the people who've come forward. Again, I've read some interviews that were Google translated. That's the best I can do. But like, you don't have weird egos with the people who worked on this game. They are genuine people who, let's just say, were like, yeah, we had some ideas. If you have this notion that working in games in Japan is any different than what the people in the West are fighting for, better rights and like actual good work conditions and Q&A. That wasn't the case with us. We had the same struggles. Like production cycles were terrible. Like it's the culture of this game is the most admirable part of it. I don't enjoy any part of playing it. I understand and respect the speedrunning community, knowing how to beat this game under 3 hours. I played this game the way that it was intended to be played, and I had an absolutely miserable time, and will judge this game for the miserable time I experienced.
And that's fair. I don't want to tell people like, your experience with the game is wrong, unless you were engaging it in a way where like you weren't like privy to the instructions, like what have you. That's a different story. That's not what you did.
Yeah.
You took it on its own terms. You put an effort into understanding how it's meant to be played and like approach and whatnot. If you don't vibe with it, you don't vibe with it, and that's absolutely fair and valid.
A good
I just hope that people, I just hope that people who potentially want to play this game. This is where I'm going to talk for a minute about like some things that have been happening behind the scenes with this game.
I'll go one step further. I think it is absolute bullshit that the Switch port of this game did not come out of Japan.
Yes.
That is a crime.
That Switch port, by the way, has like cheats that give you just infinite gold at all times, start at level 30. They give you concessions. They give you rewind in that version of the game.
It's criminal that game didn't come out of Japan. Period.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Cassidy, you've got some. You've been alluding to some stuff about this game. I want to give you full court here talk about the stuff.
I thank you kindly for that. At a point in time, I was working with a ROM hacker by the name of Rainey Baker, who is prolific in multiple different fields, music, writing, just an incredibly talented person that's been gone too soon. Recently, in the past month or two, depending on when you're listening to this, I suppose, it had passed. And something that she wanted to work on, I was going to work on with her, was a translation of this game, an updated translation of Hoshi wo Miru Hito. Unfortunately, it's not going to come to pass, not from her anyway. And similarly with her efforts to translate in the Psychic City and make that playable. But recently, I did stream the game for its 35th birthday, or anniversary, as it were. And because of that, I was contacted by a different ROM hacker who goes by on Twitter at Bofa de Beppo, BOFADIBEPPO, who contacted me and said, hey, ever since your stream, people have been pestering me to do a translation of Hoshi wo Miru Hito. And that's something they've apparently been working on for the past few weeks and should be releasing soon from the time of this recording. And that's going to be the ideal way for English-speaking players to potentially play this game, I think. It's going to make all that dialogue that was untranslated completely translated, so you can maybe get the context clues to solve some of the game's more eccentric puzzles, let's say. You can get the full plot, all that background info. We can understand what's happening in the game. Yeah. Finally,
useful, helpful, enhances the experience overall.
Absolutely. While I still think that obviously, the ideal thing would be to have that Switch version come here in some capacity.
Yeah, that Switch version, like you said, it has hey, what if you just made your characters invincible? That seems
because it's
so
such an interesting game. It's such a fascinating little product. And it's one of those ones that's been so hard to recommend to people because the current state of it is so untenable, is so unapproachable, at least to someone who can't just read Japanese, right? Yeah. To those of us who don't have the benefit of that.
It is a pretty rough patch. There are parts that are not even just incomplete, but just kind of just seem to be rendering incorrect,
straight up broken menu options that are blank, so you can't actually heal certain party members at a point.
Like I said,
you absolutely need to.
I did not know if I had that oxygen pipe or that oxygen tank for a while. I maybe missed the audio cue, which it's all even in game. All it does is it's pop.
It's
up
a singular
an
beep
cue.
note.
So and then
with this, it should hopefully give people who have been curious about this for however long some means of approaching it. And I think if it's a game that you're curious about, then why not give it a shot?
I'm Hoshi curious. Let's just say,
if you are a trash goblin like us, and Cassidy, I have to admit, I think you might be more powerful than any of us here, because.
It just comes from a place, I guess. And this is what I would say to people. And this is my whole philosophy. If I can just eloquate on it for a second here, I guess, if I can
please
talk up my own ass for a minute here.
No, good. You have the floor. Ass talk. Let's go.
I love these bad games. I'm so weirdly passionate about them. They're basically all I play at this point. At a certain point, when you start to learn the sausage of how games get made, there comes a point where the more interesting ones are the bad ones, and trying to decode what the ambition was, what the idea was, what the vision was behind them, and learn to see past the things that would alienate a gamer, potentially, like bad control or whatever, learning to brute force those, whatever you need to do, learn to engage with them on the terms that the developers intended for you to engage with them on. And there's just this whole world of games out there that have all these sorts of wild ideas. And the only way to find them is to sometimes scour these obscure games or low-rated games that people have just written off. I always try to encourage people, if there's a bad game that seems to have some sort of interesting idea to it, if it's a game that you were waiting on anxiously, it comes out, gets lambasted by reviewers, or this has a toxic reputation in terms of this critical and commercial consensus, or whatever people write on Metacritic, whatever that stuff, put that stuff out of your mind if you can, and just try to engage with it. And see if there's some merit to it, see if there's some value. One of my favorite games, and unironically, because people think I'm always doing bits, is Drake of the 99 Dragons on the Xbox. Thoroughly broken game by all metrics, right? Where your arms are swinging wildly around. It's a Max Payne clone where you can't aim at anything. And it has some novel ideas. You got to play the PC version. Don't play the Xbox version, because that version is straight up broken.
Oh,
but the PC,
so that's where I was going to say my only exposure is the Xbox version. So
and there's still some merit to the Xbox version. There's some cutscenes that I think
I
are
don't
interesting.
know if I go that far.
It has a charm to it. At the end of the day, regardless of how you feel about it, there's a charm. There's a goofy charm to it. There's ambition to it beyond just being like a simple clone, which is what it was written off as. And so a game like Hoshi wo Miru Hito, I look at and I understand, obviously, the frustrations that people have with it. I understand how it gets its reputation in Japan. And I look at it and I'm so compelled by what they were trying to do. I'm so compelled by how innovative it is in certain senses. And obviously the execution of those ideas is not 100%. It is not viable for like a broad audience, but I just can't help but walk away from it like appreciating it, even as it wastes my time. Even that 3-hour playthrough, I should admit, a 3-hour playthrough, heavily cheated. I can make myself level 30, so like get through stuff for a stream.
I cannot fault you for that, as I have just watched Neil Breen's most latest epic. So yeah, there's the right bad, and maybe this game is the right bad. Except I still hate the fact that those weird, when you go to that city, there's those weird crisscross things that do damage to your party leader, and you don't know that.
Yeah, they should probably broadcast that.
They should probably broadcast when you're taking damage, walking on a goddamn tile.
It would be nice
for you. In the same way that I played Countdown Vampires last year and still won't shut the fuck up about it because it's such a bizarre, inept thing.
Yeah, and I play.
Protagonist is so cool.
I do a stream series where I do nothing but play bad misclones, because boy howdy are there a lot of bad misclones.
Boy howdy are there ever. So I don't know. I guess this is put a capper on my train of thought here. Is just like give Hoshi wo Miru Hito a chance. If the things we talked about as far as the power fantasy stuff. Yeah.
I think back to a quote by the legendary, the intelligent John Waters when he was asked, what do you think that new and upcoming directors should do? And he says, I think you should watch bad movies. Understand why the medium doesn't work when you make mistakes. Watch bad movies. If your brain tells you that, should I cut this? You should. When your brain asks, is this scene too long? It is. And just make sure that when you make a movie that the people who like it are more than just your mom, your best friend, and the person you're having sex with.
That's good advice. And I will also add this. Don't be afraid to fail, because I talk a lot to a lot of indie developers. I write for Indiepocalypse on occasion, and I communicate with these people, and I really hope that people take away, like, if you want to get into the games industry and you want to like build your own games, if you have like some sort of vision in your head and you're worried about like the viability of it, or people like not understanding what your intention is with it, or whatever the case may be, but if you have that drive to make a game, make it, and don't be afraid if it doesn't fully connect. Don't be afraid of like things don't work, because we all have to get through these things. We all have to get these games out of us. We have to get these intrusive thoughts out of our heads so we can move on to the next project and learn from those experiences. These developers at Hot B, working under Hot B, I should say, these developers at Another did their darndest with this game. It obviously made a bunch of mistakes, and then I would presume they learned from them for the next time around. Even if they didn't make another like RPG on this scale, I'm sure there was still valuable experience. If they had been given a chance to make another RPG, to make another version of this game, the third time's the charm, trying to do the same plot that had been done on the PC-88 already and had been done on Famicom or whatever. You know, who's to say if that third chance may have been like the best RPG of its era, right? There's always that potentiality. They could have applied the lessons learned and come up with something that's like truly unique, but also functional. And, you know, it's a long, tough road to get there, potentially, and they didn't get that chance necessarily, but there's just that potential in all of us. We can all grow up and learn or develop our psychic abilities, much like the characters in this game.
One of the most valuable, if not the most valuable asset you can have in almost any field is just your ability to ship stuff, just to finish projects. That is great advice for people trying to break into almost any industry. As someone who showed up on the doorstep of a website almost a decade ago, was like, hey, do you guys need help editing podcast? And like several years later, I was getting paid a measurable amount of money to do that. You can just show up as long as you are turning in work. It can grow. So I don't know and you know, maybe it was pretty. If you go back and listen to early HG 101 top 47,000 game episodes, they sound very bad, and that's me. that was me cutting teeth and learning. That it is rough. So I couldn't agree more. We do have to do one perfunctory thing before we got off the phone, and that's unfortunately. put Hoshi wa Miru Hito on a list, because that's the sort of perverse thing that we do in these parts of the woods, largely because of me. This is my doing, and I'm sorry. But if you'd like to be a part of these rankings, yeah, you're not sorry.
Lists are cool.
I'm
Right,
not
Braden?
sorry either.
Braden, lists are good. They're a wonderful way to communicate information.
Lists are good.
Oh no, wait, never mind. Lists are terrible.
Right.
I regret all of this.
Do it both ways. Give me lists.
What's the
good.
intention of the list?
Yeah.
What were the developers thinking when they wrote the list?
Our guest doesn't know. I have an obsession with just finding the worst clickbait SEO lists.
He finds the worst, definitely written by ChatGPT at this point.
Oh yeah, I've been down that hole before. Thanks to the gamer.
Great. It's good. It's good.
Thanks, Triple Jump.
Good.
Yeah.
Finding the right bad list is like finding another Hoshi wa Miru Hito. You gotta find it.
Just crystallizing
Top
them.
5 JRPG villains that are like from anime.
It's good stuff.
Top 10
unforgotten
Nintendo games that
games.
should
Number
be made
1,
by Bethesda.
Sonic Adventures 2. It has to be the right kind of bad.
I hate you.
Well, our list is definitely one of the better ones. It is ranked though, which is kind of a bummer. But it is you can visit it anytime you want, any day. It's free. I won't charge you. It's bit.ly. That's bit.ly/OTDE rank. It is a list of RPGs. Every RPG that ever existed that we've coincidentally touched or played and perhaps completed. The list begins with a really powerful threesome of, I guess, going down the podium. Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven, our favorite RPG, followed by Suikoden, followed by Xenosaga Episode 1, Dervils Are Mocked. Those are generally accepted to be good games. At the bottom, I'm just going to list off the bottom 5 in descending order, just to kind of give a sounding for our guest Cassidy. In 42nd place, we have Virtual Hydlide, largely on the strength of me lobbying to have it that high, followed by the Game Boy Color port of Towers, Lord Banff's Deceit, which is, I believe, an Amiga game that was ported to the Game Boy Color.
No, it was an Atari Falcon game.
Yes, thank you. But we didn't rank that. We ranked the Game Boy Color port of it, followed by Secret of the Stars, which is, maybe a meaningful comparison point here.
Say it's incompetent and just move on.
Followed by Aiden Chronicles, the First Mage, for the N64, which we'll talk a little bit more maybe about all of these pretty soon. And at the very bottom, Unlimited Saga by Square. Perhaps you've heard of them. So
yeah, I am.
So
what were you thinking, like top 5, top 6?
Well,
for Hoshi?
I gotta say, you've curse you, but you've really made me think about this a little bit. Because, here's the thing. I would happily accept Virtual Hydlide being a better game than this. Every day of the week, forever, open shut case, not even close. Virtual Hydlide is really not that bad. It's really not. No one agrees with me.
Funny.
Virtual Hydlide is... I would say Virtual Hydlide is an interesting experiment, and
it's the best golf engine you've ever seen.
Damn right. Check out our article on Virtual Hydlide. Shameless plug. BadGameHallOfFame.com. Virtual Hydlide article. Whole history of Hydlide there.
It's a fantastic, and then the companion piece.
Never made a truly great Hydlide game,
and it runs at 5 frames per second. It's amazing.
It's very good. So it's, in all seriousness, so Secret of the Stars for the SNES.
Which game? Okay, I think that Secret of the Stars is better than this game only because it is slightly more up-tempo in terms of the speed and the transition between different environments. It's a push in terms of if you grade RPGs based off story and characterization,
grindability.
Yeah.
This really does come down to, for me, the game juice, right? What are games? Why do we play games? This game, Hoshi wa Miru Hito, it ain't got juice. It's sand. It's all sand. This chicken was put in the microwave, and for whatever reason, the microwave was set to 5 minutes. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a hockey puck, okay? That's where I come from. Secret of the Stars has a little bit more juice, only because, one, its mechanics are immediately more approachable, And what sabotages it is not the fact that it is inscrutable. What sabotages it is the concept that you need to grind twice.
Yeah. And in conflict with the two parties at that. Because, again, you can occasionally position the other party in the world such the way that you've barred the progress of the other in a truly insane way. Here's my thinking. Aiden Chronicles is where it is for all of the interesting things that game potentially has in it. It is entirely too dull. It is boring. I would say
trying a lot of things on the N64, a console it is not suited for at all.
Not even close. Hoshi wa Miru Hito, for all of its issues, I wouldn't just say I was ever bored. Not once. Now
I don't know if I agree with this.
Jeff.
I don't know if I agree with this at all. Just because, I don't know, actually needing to grind in Hoshi wa Miru Hito might have been one of the worst feeling experiences. That moment of I went in the dungeon and I did some exploring. Oh, now I'm just, okay. I'm completely in this opposite side of the continent, and now I'm kind of screwed.
I'm willing to concede that this is probably lower than a virtual hide. I think virtual hides should be way higher. I'm one of those sickos, but that's a whole other conversation that I missed out on. So I guess we're deciding whether it's a new 44 or 45 on this, or are you thinking it's a new 47? Is there anyone here wants to put it at the very bottom?
Saga?
What was that, Braden?
Is this worse than Unlimited Saga?
I think this comes down to Unlimited Saga versus this game. Because Aiden Chronicles is coherent. It has a coherence. There's no point where you need to pick up something that's literally invisible from the floor.
So Unlimited Saga, we kind of cheated. We chatted briefly about this in our private Discord room. The thing about Unlimited Saga, I have met people who have made impassioned defenses of that game to me. A person who does not particularly like Unlimited Saga that may have poisoned my mind just ever so slightly. But the thing that Unlimited Saga does that I want to just literally go quote myself. It is a beautiful, bespoke pain box. It is a Baroque instrument.
It's an unfeeling machine.
It is a self-flagellation, Rube Goldberg device by one man, Akitoshi Kawazu, basically. It is a singular vision, and it is completely unknowable, unscrutable, except it's literally not. There are people who understand that game very well. It is, in fact, a doable thing. If you're willing to engage with it. Most people are not willing to spend the sweat equity to learn how to play Unlimited Saga, and perhaps rightfully so. I don't know anymore. I have lost sight of things. This just feels a lot less thoughtful than Unlimited Saga in terms of its problems.
I have a counterpoint.
Okay.
My counterpoint is, and this may be the argument, this is going to be my argument for this, for putting it above Unlimited Saga. There was once a person in my Discord server who would not shut the hell up about Unlimited Saga and trying to get me to write about it and trying to get me to play the whole game. And they were the most obnoxious person in that Discord by far, to the point where they were one of the first people I had to ban from my Discord. And for that alone, I refuse to touch this game, to have any sort of opinion on it. And I want to put Hoshi wa Miru Hito above it, just to spite this single individual. The most petty thing I could possibly put here. The most petty argument I could possibly put forth.
But we're talking about what is the bottom? This is not the bottom of the barrel. We could play a movie adaptation tie-in game, but I think that there's some sort of poetic symbolism to Hoshi wa Miru Hito being at the bottom of our list compared to Unlimited Saga, because again, Unlimited Saga is for sickos.
It is the machine that ticks down the end of time.
But wouldn't it be funnier?
It's a board game
if you kept it at the bottom forever.
Who intentionally hid the rule book and said, "No, that's the game. The rule book is the game. You have to discover the rule book."
So wouldn't it be funnier if, despite that, it stayed at the bottom of the list in perpetuity, and you just kept putting games above it? Wouldn't that be a better bit?
I mean, this is almost a philosophical question. Like, which is the greater sin,
what is
malice or ignorance?
Yeah,
and I do think about this question a lot.
Unlimited Saga is a game that made sense to exactly one person, and then whoever thinks in the same headspace as that one person. This game, the difficulties and the struggles of this game are based off of like someone that didn't know how to solve the problems that they were facing.
Yeah, they occasionally just come off as whoopsies.
Shucks.
As a little, yeah. Except for, again, I am somewhat persuaded by your crazy crackpot theory that maybe this was all on purpose. I do find this somewhat compelling because the alternative kind of scares me, I suppose. I don't know. It's a fascinating case. I could see a world where this is above Unlimited Saga. I think I might actually be happy with that on some level, because again, malice versus just a whoopsie. Maybe malice is worse. Maybe. I will say this is also kind of poisoned because I'm currently working through a certain animated series called Final Fantasy Unlimited,
which is a complete waste of our time.
Yes, and apparently had some Kawazu involvement too. And I the more I ponder that, the more I'm like, this does feel like the sinister hand of Square Enix's famous head in a jar in the basement in this anime as well. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just down on the guy. So, we could be tied forever, or I could just say that it goes above Unlimited Saga. How are we all feeling?
I disagree.
Okay.
Above.
ZP, how do you feel?
I think it goes below. Brayden, did you say below or above?
I said below.
Yeah.
I like the flip a coin.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, it is 2 against 1, Jeff.
No, I'm for above.
No, yeah, I'm on Jeff's side.
Yeah.
You're a guest.
Well, I'm the only one who finished the damn game of anyone in the room. I'm the only person who's actually played through the game, so I think my vote should count.
But on the other hand, I disenfranchise you because I am the host.
Okay, we've gerrymandered the map to include the 3 people who are on this podcast network for multiple episodes.
Okay.
Listen, if Gino wants to vote on the game, he can, but only in a specific district on a specific Tuesday.
I have.
And also, we're going to close the polls early at like 6 p.m.
I have a 1 krona coin from Norway, and I'm calling heads to go above. I am flipping.
I think it is a travesty to our democratic ideals that we're using a coin flip.
Please write angry letters to inquiries@deep.lol.
Okay, and also ZP, we do have some districts in this country where you, in fact, do resolve things by a coin flip.
I know, it's a travesty.
Well, guess what? I lose because it's gone tails, so it's going below.
Damn.
So that's what the fates have decided.
The coin flip solution.
So that's okay. So we've established the new bottom of the barrel, which I guess kind of feels appropriate. Here's what I will say. You should play every one of the games on this list, with the possible exception of Aiden Chronicles. You should play. Aiden Chronicles is really
you know
really
what?
dull.
Here's what I would say. What are our bottom 5?
The new bottom 5 is going to be Towers, Lord Banif's Deceit.
You should not play that game.
So Secret of the Stars,
especially the Game Boy Color version.
Secret of the Stars, Aiden Chronicles, the first mage, Unlimited Saga, and the new currently number 47. It'll be different by the time this gets posted live. Will be Hoshi Miru Hito. Congratulations to Hot B. Those purveyors of quality fishing simulators. Again, Bass and Black Bass with Hank Parker. Not nearly as bad as you would think. It's a pretty good fishing sim.
My secret sponsor, City Connection. I'm sorry I couldn't get you the 46th slot. I knew you paid for me to be on this podcast to try and argue that, to promote your Hoshi Hito Switch release. I failed. What can I say?
Expose on the business. Well, now that the business is exposed, we may as well just go all out and shill all the way. So, Cassidy, I see the floor. Is there anything you'd like to shill as we run out the door here?
Hello there. I'm Cassidy. I run the Bad Game Hall of Fame. It's a website on the internet. You can check it out at badgamehalloffame.com. There's some articles on there, some games that may have been covered on this series before, as a matter of fact. I also do a lot of streaming these days because I want to get some of my thoughts on games out there to folk. You can check that out at twitch.tv/badgamehalloffame. I don't know. I'm going to keep playing these bad games. It's all I know at this point. It's all I feel like doing, so I'll keep doing it. And, pour one out for Rainy Baker, please, if you don't mind, and give bad games a chance.
If you could make one hot, non-written up Bad Game Hall of Fame recommendation to every one of our fans right now.
Oh, damn.
This is not me stealth asking you what the next article is, which I gotta say, since you put Crazy Bus on there was the most recent thing. I was delighted to see that because that was an early HD 101 podcast episode, and what they landed on was they had an entry on their big dumb list that was just off to the side. It just said Crazy Bus, not actually a game, but thank you for nominating it. For years and years and years, and it threw off all the formatting, and it was a nightmare. They only recently got rid of it like a couple years ago, but very familiar with Crazy Bus and was delighted.
I like a little game, a little RPG, a pirate RPG by the name of Raven's Cry from the creators of Two Worlds.
Oh.
You have to this is the thing though, you have to find the original version that was on Steam that got delisted and replaced with Curse of Raven's Cry or Call of Raven's Cry, wherever they called it. You got to find that original release. It's out there somewhere if you know where to look. And that is, it's something.
Braden has really searched for that original version of the game.
Yes, I've thought about playing the original version of that game because I think Two Worlds is a good time. It's very unintentionally funny. It's I would say most of my favorite weird ass RPGs from Eastern Europe are made in Poland, and Two Worlds is one of them. Two Worlds 2, a more competent game and thus less interesting.
Yep. And then Raven's Cry is
then they made Raven's Cry, which
the way I sell it to folk is, if you want to understand how video games are made, if you want to see it fall apart at the seams right in front of your eyes and see the code like right in front of you, it's like Ride the Hell Retribution, Raven's Cry. Those are like mandatory study if you want to understand, like when there's literal like variables like floating in front of you because like there's like uncommented code or something that just pops up as part of the interface. That's a good time.
I wasn't aware that Two Worlds 3 is an announced game going concern from this company.
They made expansions to Two Worlds 2 as late as 2019.
They sure did.
God bless them.
Okay, we have to go before we shake the very foundations of the world. Speculatively, the next thing that will come out after this episode, which is again been recorded in advance because we're all taking a nice holiday, is probably going to be the Off the Deep End Goaty episode, which will come sometime after the main pod Goaty show. So look forward to that. We will wrap up all the things we looked at over the last calendar year. It'll be a lot of fun. Everyone loves a good Goaty episode because we don't have to work nearly as hard. So that'll be tremendous. Look forward to that, folks. We're going to end things, though, right here. Thank you. Thank you for tuning into this installment of Off the Deep End. Again, questions, comments, prayer concerns, they can go to inquiries@deep.lol, or you can also message us on a Discord. How do you get into that Discord? Well, it's very easy, folks. Head over to patreon.com/deeplistens. Kick in any dollar amount. They're all super appreciated, but the $3 point is where you can add to the RPG slush pile, which we do draw from. We'll probably be drawing from that reasonably soon, actually, in real time here. In fact, the next drawing may already have happened. Ooh. Special shout out to the artist known as SuperSex420 for providing us with a podcast theme halfway. This and other great tracks by SuperSex420 are available on Bandcamp.com as long as that site exists. We are writing this from the past, remember. See you next time. And recall, there's no such thing as cheating in a single-player game, especially if you're messing around with Densetsu no Kusolstice. Bye.
Bye-bye.